Welcome into the League Company Countdown to Kickoff as the Tennessee Titans are on the road taking on the Los Angeles Chargers alongside my teammates Blaine Bishop and Brad Hopkins. I'm Kayla Anderson. Buck Reising will join us in just minutes from Los Angeles. But we are here for 2 hours. We are going to bring you up to Titans Radio and then, of course, Kickoff coming after that. Again, this show made possible by our friends at League Company. League Company, all you need. Visit them online at leaguecompany.com. And gentlemen, how are we feeling this afternoon, I should say? A little different for us not being here so bright and early, huh?
We're going to have to bring the energy since Kayla left her energy in the parking lot.
You guys, I dropped my energy drink on the way in.
Oh, yeah.
I was multitasking, talking to my mom, and I dropped it, and I dropped a lot of, swear words, too. And she said, what just happened?
It's okay. Yeah. We got you.
Well, we just saved them for our show. The swear
exactly,
words.
Right?
Yeah.
I'll just get kicked off the radio. That sounds great.
Yeah, just for Jackson.
We'll keep Jackson on his toes this afternoon. How are we feeling going into this one, you guys, considering
well rested
off of a win?
Kidding.
Yeah, seriously.
Something about a later start, though, for the fellas. Of course, I don't know about you, Blaine. It really wasn't that much of an issue dealing with the time change. But, obviously for us, the clock is noon. But for them, it'll be, 10 o'clock right now. So by the time kickoff happens, it'll be a little later start. In a 3 o'clock game for us, is a little different this year because we haven't played like a primetime team. That's one that's, that needs a 7 o'clock kick or one that gets featured, during the football games that we see. So a little later start. We'll see how the fellas react to it, whether they have, like you said, Blaine, a little bit more rest. They can sleep in a little bit this morning. And we'll see if they can do something that we haven't been able to do since 1990. And that's get a win against the Chargers on the road.
I couldn't believe that stat when I heard that.
Yeah, I saw, what was it, OTP, it was, or Jim White, one of the two. I read it, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that. But this is a game actually, I was, very optimistic about this game. And reason why is when I went and watched film of the Chargers, I didn't see much difference in them and then the Titans. What they tried to do, they tried to ball control, even though they have Herbert and it's Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh's offense and Rome and everybody else who's involved there. And then they throw just enough to, they're trying to be 50-50 as well. Mm-hmm. But when I looked at the teams that they've beat, they've only beat one team with a winning record. And so that let me know, okay, well, maybe this is a closer game than we think than what Vegas says. And Vegas is almost always right? 7.5. So I'm thinking, that's a big number for the NFL. So maybe they're just looking at records too. You just never know. So I'm hoping this is a game that we kind of can surprise them. If we hang in there close towards the end, I think all the pressure then goes to the Chargers. If the fourth quarter starts and we're up, I think then, you see some guys get a little tight around the collar there.
Yeah, this will definitely come down to which offensive coordinator calls up the best game. Greg Roman, Nick Holtz. You're talking about two really good defenses, right? You're talking about going up against the number one scoring defense, and we know our defense is pretty stout. But both of these offenses are evenly just below average. You're talking about a Chargers offense that overall is ranked 25th. They're 18th against the rush. They're 24th against the pass. They're tied for 26th in scoring, and we're not that much better. 27th overall, 12th against the rush, 31st against the pass, and obviously we're 27th in scoring. So both of these offenses need to try and take as what advantage they can get against some pretty stout defenses this afternoon.
Yeah, and I think the biggest difference that we all look at why you maybe even give the Chargers offense the benefit of the doubt, like Blaine mentioned, they have Justin Herbert, right? Which Justin Herbert, by the way, number-wise, it's not blowing off the charts, but he has played some better football as of late. And the biggest thing with him is he's protecting the football. He is doing that and not losing games, I guess, for this team, while their defense is helping out with the top scoring defense in the league right now. So they're complementary to each other, which that's the one thing right now the Titans are trying to find with this offense consistently. And that brings me to this, you guys. Will Levis.
Of course, Will Levis. It always goes back to Will Levis.
It all comes full circle, doesn't it? He is expected to start today for the first time since that Indianapolis game back on October 13th, guys. What do we think in terms of him back? And they said if his shoulder was healthy, that's the only way they were going to put him out there. So I don't want to hear any excuses with throws today that it was, the shoulder wasn't right.
Well, let's not have the changes. Let's not have anything change this week from last week. Last week we had a 128-yard rusher. or 24, or whatever it was. We didn't give up any sacks.
Yeah.
Mason Rudolph threw for 240 yards, had a couple of touchdowns. Now, there was that pick, but he had a 90.5 passer rating.
There was one sack, I believe, right?
Yeah, probably.
On the right side. I think Watson had one.
Either way, you're talking about an offense that did do better by performances standards.
Yeah.
And that'd be a good place for Will Levis to pick up, right? So we can see that the compliments are playing better, and if they play better consistently this week like they did last week, then there's really no reason why he shouldn't at least give them a better chance to win today.
Better chance than Mason Rudolph. When you look at their stats, Mason Rudolph and Levis are very comparable.
Similar.
So I just can't understand Levis is so horrible. Well, Mason Rudolph did somewhat the same thing through his little bit of time of starting here the last 3 weeks. But naturally, everything is going to be to me about Will Levis and how quickly he can get back to up to speed and not have rust, especially early on. So I'm interested to see if they get some quick passing game to get him into a rhythm and a flow. Because as B-Hop mentioned, O-line is playing better. The tight ends have a little bit more impact, and naturally, Ridley has stepped up his game. So and more under center, actually. So things have changed somewhat.
Sure.
But when you change the biggest piece and put him back in there when he was inconsistent from the beginning, you want to see how much of it was it the pieces around him, or was it actually him? And can he be consistent in not making those mistakes this time?
Yeah, really good points there, you guys. And speaking of the other players that are either in or out right now, and we'll get this updated for you in hour 2, but L'Jarius Sneed, he is out, and it's that quad that he continues to deal with. You would have hoped that he would have been back for this game, but again, that's an injury, and Blaine has alluded to it many times. It can take a while to heal. It's just a bummer because, again, that was a big piece that came over in free agency, and it just hasn't really, at this point, panned out because of the injury part of it. He just hasn't been on the field. Dylan Radins, and we'll get into some O-line talk a little bit later in the show, but Dylan Radins is also questionable, guys. He's dealing with that toe. He did not play last week, which when Lloyd Cushenberry went out, we kind of saw the changing of what was going on. So who came in at center? It was
Daniel Brunskill.
Brunskill at first, right?
Yeah, and then Levin. And then Corey Levin and Brunskill moved over to guard. So today it kind of depends on if Dylan Radins plays, is if we see Brunskill at center or Corey Levin, but they want to see Brunskill. That's what they've planned for this week for the most part. When I talked to Radins, he said that he was progressing. He felt good, but then again, he's questionable. So he's questionable, and then Julius Chestnut questionable, but the good thing there, Tajay Spears is back. Tajay Spears has been out for 3 weeks as well. Yeah. So
provide some balance, take a little bit of the workload off of Tony. But, you're talking about Dylan Radins' injury. That's where your power comes from. You know what I mean? And he hasn't had a lot of people pushing on him, to see if that thing is actually up to speed. I would imagine that, sure, he's gotten some reps during practice, but in a full-time game situation, how much power, how much balance is he going to be able to have, at his disposal, especially in the trenches at a guard spot. So we'll see. We'll see how that happens.
Well, I think it really depends on which toe it is.
If it's a big toe, if it's his pinky toe, if it's his pinky toe, you get over to just.
If that powerhouse big toe, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
We need that big toe working.
That's what they talk about. That turf toe is really synonymous with the ball of your foot, right? You're trying to plant and get some power with that. Hey, that's an issue. But that's a good point, Blaine. Is that pinky toe? Is that little nub on the end, or is it?
So I don't know what toe. Do you know, Kayla? I don't know.
I don't. I did not ask him which toe, but he seems like a pretty, for the most part, guy that would want to be out there because he has really found a place at right guard this season. I think he wants to continue to build off of that. So if he can be out there, I know he will be. The only kind of hint was on Saturday, it looked like they had elevated Corey Levin from the practice squad. So maybe they are just having that for security blanket, or maybe that is a thing. So we'll see today. In the second hour.
I don't want to see Corey snapping, though, because I think that every time Mason Rudolph's had to jump for a rebound because the snap was so high, it affects the timing of the play. You know what I mean? Blaine talked about getting into a quick rhythm, right? That means that I think there's less time for the coverage to get on the receiver before the ball's out of the quarterback's hands. And it's more decisive for a quarterback if he knows that, hey, I'm going to the flat. Hey, I'm going for this hook route. Hey, I got a slant going right here. And it's out of my hands quickly. Then it doesn't allow protection to be an issue. You know what I mean? But if the snap's not where it needs to be for the quarterback to kind of hit in that rhythm, that's an issue.
So it absolutely
hopefully that's
can
not
be.
the case.
Yeah.
Accuracy with the snaps. It's important.
I know. It might be the little things, but the little details matter. They matter. Coming up on the Lead Company Countdown to Kickoff, our good friend Buck Reising is going to join us next from Los Angeles. Hopefully he's awake and did not do anything too crazy last night in the LA lights there. Who knows? We'll get Buck Reising's story, and we'll get his thoughts on Will Levis. He wants to talk about that. Also, L'Jarius Sneed. We brought up that he is out again today. What do we start to feel about that moving forward? We'll have those answers coming up next on the Lead Company Countdown to Kickoff. Welcome back to the Lead Company Countdown to Kickoff. This is the Titans get ready for their game on the road against the Los Angeles Chargers. The Titans trust their home stadium to Lead Company to tackle their HVAC, plumbing, and electrical problems. They can protect your home too. Your next play, visit leadcompany.com. Lead Company, all you need. Welcome back in, and we've got the whole crew here today. Blaine Bishop, Brad Hopkins, Jackson Williams doing everything behind the glass. I'm Kayla Anderson, and now our good friend from Los Angeles joining us. I'm proud that he is awake and he didn't get too caught up there in West Hollywood last night, getting into shenanigans. Buck Reising joins us now.
How do we know that? How do we know he didn't get caught up in some
I'm just
shenanigans?
setting him up to maybe, say I'm wrong.
Tell the truth, Buck.
Yeah.
What happened?
She doesn't know that at all. She's dead wrong. But I'm here. I'm here. I'm surviving. I'm thriving. Life is good.
I know that's right.
Hey, look, I know what it's like there on West Hollywood. I got some friends that I visit over there quite frequently. So,
Oh, no wee-ho for me last night. I was in Beverly Hills.
Go ahead, big dog.
Were. Look at
See
him.
it. Huh.
He says, I was in Beverly Hills. Where'd you eat last night, Buck?
I went to the Mayborn Hotel, had a little brunch at Dante, then I went to the Grill on the Alley, had
Look
a
at
little
you.
stone crab. We're living good out.
Listen to his smile. You can hear his smile on his face, huh?
I wouldn't expect
He's out there
anything
parlaying,
else.
having some fun. I see.
Exactly.
Hey,
Well,
listen, if we're gonna schlep around for this at this point in the year, then I think we better to enjoy it than not.
exactly. Enjoy it a little. We enjoy you coming on here, Buck, a little bit earlier with us today. And the big news that we all want to talk about is Will Levis is back, expected to start today, and is healthy. Because they said again he was not going to go out there unless that shoulder was healthy. What were your initial thoughts just knowing he was going to get the start today?
All right, let's F around and find out. So I'm just, I have no expectation because I truly, with him, on a week-to-week basis when he was in the lineup, I just didn't know what to expect. So we have returned to that. Mason Rudolph is very much a known commodity. Will Levis is, there are things that we know about him, but there are definitely still questions that you have in real time. And how he manages the situation for an offense that guys, it felt like, whether or not it's going to be overwhelmingly successful or, turn around and they're going to go 11-6 all of a sudden after the way that they started, that of course remains to be seen and is highly improbable. But they have made progress as an offensive group, as an offensive line, as a running game, and even as a passing game. And now you put in the biggest variable with your offensive progress, and you have no idea really what to expect today against the team that is leading the NFL in scoring defense this year in the Los Angeles Chargers, featuring quite a few former Titans, including a bunch of dudes on the practice squad that I'd forgotten about. Caleb Murphy is on the Chargers practice squad. Apparently he's getting called up today for talking to some people on the sideline for Jim Harbaugh. And there was another one whose name escapes me off the top of my head, outside of the known commodities.
Hassan Haskins?
No, Hassan, it was another practice squad guy.
Oh,
another fringe Titan
We'll
guy.
get into Elijah Molden and the year he's having in just a few minutes because he's doing some things in that secondary. But, I'll say this, Buck, and I want to get your thoughts. It seems to me that Mason Rudolph being in the lineup has actually taken some of the pressure away from Will Levis because he didn't come in there and just win the position. In other words, make it almost impossible for Will Levis to get his job back by his performance. The first win by the Titans in Miami wasn't at the behest of Mason Rudolph and his efforts. It was maybe more a concerted effort to get the ball on the ground and be consistent with it. But I would say some of the same mistakes that Will Levis was making, Mason Rudolph made them himself. So it just seems like, him getting his job back, him getting back in the starting lineup, it really doesn't seem like that's going to be that much of a difference from one quarterback to the next. What do you think?
It shouldn't be, but there's just no way that here's the thing with him, Brad, with Levis specifically. We have no idea what's going on in his head, right? Like the maniac moments that lead us to the biggest questions about him and ultimately his decision-making, or whether or not you just flat out trust the guy. Like, yes, I would agree with you that Mason Rudolph has missed some stuff that Levis, had maybe been able to capitalize on or can do at a higher level, obviously, because he is a quarterback with significantly higher level traits. But I have no idea how he's going to react to getting out here for the first time, because I don't know what's going on in his head. I mean, it's the rewiring his brain comments. It's little things about not being on the same page with the coach about his shoulder, his recovery, his rest, his rehab, and in the weeks leading up to this thing, he's such a wild card to me, which makes it enjoyable and entertaining, I guess, to an extent. But trying to forecast any of the results that are going to happen on the field today is beyond my level of comprehension.
Buck Reising joining us from Los Angeles today. And here's another thing. And you talked about, gaining maybe some different perspective. If you're Will Levis, you need to do that. And that's what Brian Callahan said earlier this week, that he hopes Will Levis got out of it. It's one thing to gain different perspective and rewire your brain. It's another thing, though, to come into an offense, like you said, that's finding its groove. One player that is finding his groove is Calvin Ridley. And I feel like that's something he's got to pick off where Mason Rudolph and him left off. Is it that simple, though, to say?
No, and it's not just Calvin, right? It's Nick Westbrook-Akina, who is not getting a ton of reps with the ones, obviously, with Levis and them in training camp. And given that Treylon Burks was being featured at the time, or maybe not featured outright, but having a larger role in the starting offense at the time, and now that's thrown into flux. So you're talking about a player who was still trying to get his feet under him in a new offense, who's coming back out here to try and reestablish, or just generally establish, that chemistry with the top option that they have as far as the skill guys go, and also the most effective option that they have as far as the skill guys go, which is NWY, who's got a touchdown pass in his last 4 straight games. He's I think top 5 in terms of guys who have scored a touchdown in consecutive games here.
I think Derrick Henry's right above him.
Yeah, Derek's got 6.
Yeah.
Derek's still excellent in finding the end zone, absolutely.
Yeah.
No question. But there's a couple of different factors here to consider specific to that passing game, because that's where they feel like they had found the biggest breakthrough, right? They had gotten it going with Tony Pollard and the offensive line and things like that, but specific to the drop-back passing game and how much more fluid it had looked with Mason than it did at the start of the season with Will, is curious. And the other part, guys, which I'm sure we'll get to at some point, is the offensive line. How is that going to factor in with some changing pieces and parts here today, putting Will Levis back in the lineup, because he was getting sacked at an exorbitant rate when he was in the lineup, and all of a sudden Mason Rudolph comes in and they're taking significantly less sacks. So.
Yeah, they're taking significantly less sacks because Mason's just getting the ball out of his hands faster. We only took 1 sack last week, but they still lead the league in what? Pressure.
Sure.
And that pressure adds a degree of difficulty to no matter what quarterback is under center. And I think that when you start adding that into the equation, you can see why some of these quarterbacks are struggling. Mason or Will, in those situations where they're trying to make something happen, they end up creating a turnover, which ultimately ends up turning into points, against the Titans. But I think that's one thing that we need to take into consideration. Protection was better last week in Week 9. They only allowed that 1 sack on 33 attempts. But he was still, Mason Rudolph, pressured 40% of the time. So I think going with this more decisive approach of getting the ball out of your hands quickly, finding that open receiver, those receivers finding themselves, to be able to get open in those routes that are specifically designed to go to them, that could be better for the offense. But, we're talking about a defense this week that has featured 3 dudes with double-digit sacks. I know that Khalil Mack might not be in the lineup. He's questionable. Joey Bosa might not be in the lineup. But Tuli Tuipulotu had 2.5 sacks. Morgan Fox had two sacks. So this could be a situation where pressure could be paramount yet again this week.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's going to be a huge part of that, and how Levis adapts, right? Is he capable of adapting to that pressure in his face? Because that was a part of the book coming out on him in college, right? How well does he feel things in the pocket? How often is he taking unnecessary sacks? Of course, that's a factor here today. I will say, for what it's worth, and this may not necessarily mean anything, but because I was here for the walkthrough for the production at SoFi Stadium, they did have Bosa and Mack on the Jumbotron as being introduced. It sounds like they plan to introduce the starting defense today. So maybe it's something that they're going to clean up before the game actually starts, depending on what the lineup looks like. But just a little note in there.
Oh, that's interesting. Buck Reising joining us from Los Angeles. We're just talking a little bit about Will Levis, and now obviously the offensive line in front of him also changes a bit because you have, that glue in the middle, Lloyd Cushenberry, who's done for the season. He's on IR, and then you're going to have to shuffle everything because Dylan Radins is questionable, Buck, as well. So they're hoping that they can put in Daniel Brunskill at center, which has kind of been the piece they were hoping to put in there, if something like this happened. Then you move over or you keep Dylan Radins at right guard, and then, you're doing the transfer thing with Leroy Watson and John Ojukwu. But if that does not happen and Dylan Radins is not healthy, then you're shuffling even more. How concerning is that?
I mean, it's concerning, but this is the kind of stuff that you start to deal with at the halfway point and through the rest of the season, right? Everybody's banged up. Everybody's got a unit that looks different than the group that they started with. So, of course, it's concerning. It's one of the least efficient pass-blocking offensive lines in football. In fact, it's the second worst efficient from an efficiency standpoint, pass blocking unit. So you keep an eye on that. And like we talked to Bill Callahan, the offensive line coach this week, he called it unfortunate that Dunscombe had to play guard, and they did call up Corey Levin today. Though I think that's more of just in case something happens in game, that they have to make those adjustments. I know that Kayla, I don't know if you caught up with Dylan Radins in the locker room earlier this week, but he did express some level of optimism about being able to go today. So you hope that is indeed the case. He was at least limited all week in practice, which is progress from last week.
Do we know which toe it is?
Yeah, right.
You know, Blaine, I don't, but that is an interesting question to ask, because I'm sure you'll be able to express why one toe might matter than the other as far as trying to plant and set and do all the things, anchor, that you need to do with your feet as an offensive line.
Yeah, that's what, B-Hop, that's why I asked that question, because B-Hop said, yeah, that could probably be a difference in, your power source. So it'll be interesting to see if he's ready to rock and roll. And it's the same Dylan Radins that he was before.
Which has been good for the most part. On the defensive side, Buck, L'Jarius Sneed, he is out again. Dealing with that quad injury. At this point, I feel like the depth at that position, for the most part, they've been able to step up, but it's a situation where you continue to see him not be able to play in these games. At some point, it could be a bit concerning.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, we haven't gotten to talk to him in a while, because obviously he's been unavailable for things as far as the media goes. When he's not playing, he doesn't have to speak to us. But I would love to know, hey, what's going on here specifically, because if he was going to miss 4 weeks and they had an idea that he could miss that extended period of time, why wasn't he placed on injured reserve? How much of this is an ongoing dialogue? How much longer is it going to last? And for a guy that's got a degenerative knee issue, is there any discourse at all to consider shutting him down in some form or fashion? Because you're already having to manage the situation, and how much worse is he going to get if he's out here playing on a couple of different injuries or with 2 different injury situations on a 2-6 football team, right? So it's pretty interesting. I know that he wants to get back out here for no other reason to make some game checks, because obviously he got that big contract in the offseason. He wants to see as much of that money as humanly possible, and an IR stint would impact that slightly.
Buck, I just can't help to think that maybe Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh are wringing their hands together when you're looking at the injuries in the secondary. Quandre Diggs being out, Mike Brown probably being in the lineup, L'Jarius Sneed is out for another week, and you're talking about an offense that is coming off of its back-to-back 25-plus point game. You know what I mean? He was Justin Herbert had a 125.8 passer rating, and he threw for 282 yards and a couple of touchdowns with no picks. Quentin Johnston, the guy that they picked up in the first round last year, he caught 5 balls, 118 yards, and Ladd McConkey's pretty good himself. So I would imagine this is more of a litmus test against the injury-riddled secondary than anything else facing this offense. What do you think?
I would honestly love to see them try and force the Chargers into a drop-back passing game. The biggest thing for the Chargers is they haven't had to play that way that often, because their ground game is so efficient. They're out here with a fullback and J.K. Dobbins just mowing over teams and allowing Justin Herbert to be super efficient. So it would be curious to see if the Titans can effectively stop the run, which has been kind of their bread and butter. Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman want to come out here and try and kick your ass on the ground with their rushing attack. Are you able to force them into that situation? And then, come what may, because you're dealing with a rookie 5th-round corner and a guy who they pulled off the street to come in here after Cheeto and Sneed both went down. So it would not. They don't necessarily have advantageous matchups, guys. But as far as this goes, this has been a defense that's been tested a couple of times and frankly has held its own, to their credit. I mean, I know that they don't generate a ton of pressure. I know that they don't disrupt the quarterback too often, say Drake May last week, where you saw Jeff Simmons and how that can directly lead to turnovers and things like that. But it will be fascinating to see if they can try and make the Chargers one-dimensional. Not many teams have been able to do it this year.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I do agree with that premise, but I think sometimes when you go into a game, you're wondering, what do they want to accomplish? And they want to accomplish the running game. I know we all know about Justin Herbert, but he couldn't beat him with his arm, the last couple years. So do you want to force them to be a passing team, even though you have some numbers down, because that's not what they want to do? So you want to put them in an uncomfortable situation here as far as throwing the ball, because I know Harbaugh, the head coach there, he does not want to be throwing the ball all over the yard, because I think his premise is we got to be able to run the football. Hopefully we can be 50-50. So they stopped the run, which is a possibility. This could be, one of those games where they throw it around a little bit, and then maybe, we can get some picks or get our hands on some footballs.
Yeah, make him uncomfortable. Try and do the thing that many people have not been able to do with him specifically so far this year. I 100% agree, Blaine.
Because that's what you want to do to the Titans, don't you? Will Levis coming back?
Yeah.
Hey, let's control Pollard in this running game.
And they have the top-scoring defense.
Let's see if they can beat us in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, it's just like what they have been trying this whole year. Let's just take it to the Titans side of the ball real quick and try to figure out who they are all year long, right? And trying a variety of different things, seeing what it'll take with the quarterback and when Will Levis has been in the offense and trying to figure out what makes the most sense. And they've come away with, just out of necessity, no, this is a running football team. First and foremost, because Tony Pollard has been special. The offensive line, they went out and acquired J.C. Latham, who is a certified ass kicker. And you want to play to those strengths, right? And now you're looking at a situation where they have started to show you some things in the passing game that they're able to accomplish, but how much does Will Levis directly impact what they were able to do in the playbook with Mason Rudolph, which is still, condensing it to an extent, and you're still having to keep tight end help in with your offensive line, though. They confuse me sometimes with the way that they deploy or don't deploy tight end help specifically to that right side in certain situations. And I know, nothing's ever perfect or nothing ever goes exactly to plan the way that you want it to, so maybe I'm nitpicking. But, that's what you want to do with the Titans, and how Will Levis and this offense responds with a full week of work and 3 weeks? He's missed 3 starts off to gain that quote-unquote perspective. Remains to be seen as Calvin Ridley walks out just next to me on the field, taking in the sights and sounds of SoFi on his phone. Look at him.
No, we can't see him. But either way,
thanks for teasing us.
Hey, Buck, when you're dealing with a secondary that has the changes that we already just laid out, it seems to me that pressure would be more imperative. We saw a sack by Jeffrey Simmons last week. Arden Key got to the quarterback last week. We need more of that from this week, so then that way Justin Herbert doesn't have a chance to dissect that defense in the back end. What do you think?
No, I mean, totally agree. Listen, pressure is always a good thing, even if it's not getting to the quarterback. I know sacks are an easy stat for people to look at and say, oh, that's a measure of a good pass rush. And it is. Sacks are a measure of a good pass rush. Individual pressures tell you more about what the individual player is doing to impact the game. But we had Arden on the radio show this week, guys. He talked about how well Denard and the staff are doing to create one-on-one matchups for him and Jeff, to allow Arden to be more impactful that way, to allow Jeff to kind of capitalize when they're sliding protection to Sweat or sliding protection to Harold or things like that. Like they seem to have found something. Now, obviously, it's incumbent upon an offensive coaching staff going up against them to adjust. So now that they put a couple of different things on tape or tried a couple of different things that they seem to have found success with, how will those adaptations take place? We await the results. But Jeff is coming off his best performance of the season, and you've kind of been waiting for that guy to take over a game, right, to be that level of special that we know him to be, understanding that he's dealing with an injury that might make him a little less special than we're used to.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just to get piggyback on top of that a little bit is I think you got to be very cautious though, because let's think about the Malik Willis game where we blitzed a lot to where we play zone behind it. So I didn't know if you guys were referring to just our front four getting after the quarterback in their one-on-one battles, or are you talking about blitzing and trying to get after Herbert to speed up the process? And it seems to me a lot of times the Titans don't do as well when we're blitzing so much so throughout a game. To me, it's almost like when it's desperation time. So how do you view it there, Buck?
Yeah, I mean, Blaine, just talking to the coaching staff and kind of like getting a read on what they're doing on the field, because that obviously tells you what they think of their own personnel. I think they're trying to limit the amount of times they put guys on an island or force guys like Jarvis Brownlee to play man coverage and things like that, because that's definitely decreased since Snead and I know Cheeto's been in the lineup for forever at this point, but they have definitely taken that into account, because honestly, I would have liked to see them and this is with a healthier roster, right? He dudes up on early downs, on first and second down, try and make their life chaotic early in the down, and then, try and keep the numbers advantage in coverage. It almost seemed to have been the opposite approach for them, and whatever. Like, it's been a successful defense so far in the year. It's been an effective defense. I know they're 2-6, so you can't overwhelmingly say successful. But it's going to be curious to see how they take on that approach, because the Chargers have bookend tackles, right? Like, they have two legit guys. Joe Alt, the rookie who's playing the right side, who's been up and down, but they do have Rashawn Slater, who is coming off a week that he would like to forget, given that they played Myles Garrett, and it was a double-digit win for the Chargers. But Myles Garrett gets, all the best tackles, and he gets anybody. It doesn't matter who you're going up against. So Rashawn Slater is going to come out here trying to dust his name off a little bit after a less than stellar performance in Week 9.
Well, our 3 is better than their 2, though, Buck. I don't know about that. What do you think?
Okay.
Maybe not.
You're listening to Lee Company Countdown to Kickoff. Lee Company, all you need. Visit them at leecompany.com. Before we let you go, Buck, I've got some good news, because we've got our betting segment coming up next, but you've got to go do another task. So I do need to get your bet for this week, and you are now 3-5, as you were the only one that won last week. You took the under. I lost my bet by 0.5, and Brad lost his by like 10 yards. Oh, I know. Yeah. So, but in the end, Buck got the win. So we got to give credit where credit's due.
Oh my!
See, that's what you get for bandwagon playing. You lose.
Are we really clapping 3-5?
I mean, it's better than our record.
We're out here talking 2-6. Yeah, hell yes.
Exactly.
You're barely above the Titans, there, Buck. Come on.
What do you got for us?
I'm above them. So I'm gonna try it again.
What do you think this week, Buck? I mean, the Chargers are favored by 7.5. I'm not liking those odds because this is an inept offense. Where's that 7.5 coming from? You expecting a defensive score? You know what I'm saying? What are you thinking this week, Buck?
Yeah, maybe.
I'm thinking they're probably looking at the special teams unit for the Titans and be like,
I thought we were going to go the segment without having to mention it.
Because we haven't. Yeah, I mean, that's the point. We haven't talked about it yet, right?
Right.
So I think for this specific situation, again, 7.5 a big number. Titans on the road, coming west. That's not an easy thing to do. So it would be tough for me to pick the Titans, obviously money line, but I would bet 7.5 on the Titans. I'll take the plus 7.5 in that spot.
Okay. Yeah, that is a big number. So, okay, he's taking the plus 7.5. We'll get to our bets. We appreciate you. We'll let you go do all your other good things. Hopefully the press box food is good as well there at SoFi.
I am optimistic. SoFi always treats us well, so it's great to be back, and looking forward to a competitive game today, guys.
Well, they ain't brunch in Beverly Hills, but enjoy it anyway.
Can we get a picture of the stadium and stuff?
Yeah, send it our way.
Come on, man.
It's already on Twitter. I got you.
Okay.
Right, cool.
We appreciate you.
See you, Buck.
All
right. See y'all. Have a good day.
You too. That's Buck Reising live from Los Angeles. He'll have all the coverage all day long. We'll continue our coverage right here. We'll have our pro props coming up next. You heard his bet. Now you got to get ours. And then we got to make Blaine pick. We put him in the weirdest, awkward position every week.
Oh, my.
You're listening to the Lee Company Countdown to Kickoff. Lee Company, all you need, visit them at leecompany.com. We'll return as the Titans taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. Welcome back to the Lee Company Countdown to Kickoff as the Tennessee Titans get ready for the Los Angeles Chargers on the road. The Titans trust their home stadium to Lee Company to tackle their HVAC, plumbing, and electrical problems. They can protect your home too. Your next play, visit leecompany.com. Lee Company, all you need. It is that time of the show that we attempt to win you money. We've got some good news because Buck did win you money last week, if you listen to him. Brad and I got really, really close.
Really close.
Really close. So you took Mason Rudolph, 250 plus passing yards, and he ended up with what, 240? Which is like, and I took 20 and a half points for the Titans, and they ended up with 20. So that was a tough one. I think Blaine sided with me last week. I lost by 0.5. Oh. I know. It was heartbreaking. I was actually up there in the booth with all of us because it was a home game. And when they kicked that field goal, I was like, oh, yep, I lost by 0.5. I was thinking they could score the touchdown, then I would have been good.
Being honest, I wouldn't have been as close as I was had we not gone into overtime because at the end of regulation, he only threw for just over 200 yards.
How much are y'all monitoring you guys' pick throughout the game?
I am monitoring it a lot.
The week before, I picked the Titans having 2 sacks, right? After Arden Key got the very first play, a sack in the game, I text Kayla. I said, Kayla, we're halfway there. We're almost there.
Yes.
I was so excited about it.
Yep.
And then you got...
And then it's wow.
Wah, wah.
So I'm curious as to see what you have this week.
Okay, so let's go ahead and go there.
Okay.
Now listen, Armani Hooker had 2 picks last week, right?
Yes, he did.
Now Elijah Molden, the guy that we traded to L.A. In August, he's actually one of 3 players that have 3 picks on the season. Xavier McKinney and Kalen Bullock are the other 2. And right now, both teams, the Titans and the Chargers, are kind of when it comes to the turnover differential. The Titans are minus 11. The Chargers are minus 9. But I'm going to go this week and say that the Titans win the turnover battle, which means they have to get one in essence, right?
That's true.
But they still, in my opinion, do better than the Chargers by giving the ball back to their offense with another chance to do something with it. So give me the Titans in the turnover differential. They get the W in that category.
So just one or just differential?
It could be just
game?
Better than them. So in other words, let's just say the Chargers got 2, which would be bad for our offense, right? But guess what? The Titans get 3.
Okay.
If it's just 1 for the Titans and Chargers get 0, then we're better.
Okay, so they win the turnover battle.
They win the turnover battle.
You're putting down. Jackson, can you mark these down back there, by the way, too? And
thumbs up from Jackson.
Buck took plus 7.5, Titans plus 7.5. I'm going to go ahead and stick with what works for me in terms of winning these bets because anytime I pick something that has to do with the run game, it usually works out well. And Tajay Spears is returning, which is a good sign. I don't know how much, he's going to be utilized today. I'm sure giving Tony Pollard a break is what they're going to want to do. But Tony Pollard, when it's all said and done, has been the consistent, reliable force for this offense. I don't think they're going to, take him away anytime soon. So give me Tony Pollard. He's gone over 60 yards throughout the entire season. So give me Tony Pollard 60 plus yards.
Let me ask you something. Whose line would you take right now? The Titans or the Browns offensive line? Go.
Titans.
Okay.
Because I just feel like the Browns, no matter what, they always do one thing. They literally wreck people's careers. So I'll just say, at least I'll go with the Titans with that.
I asked the question because Nick Chubb ran for only 40 yards against this Chargers defense last week.
Yeah, that's true.
So, and then, of course, they also gave away 6 sacks. They got Jameis Winston on the ground. They hit him 9 times. So it was just.
I guess what I'm saying is I don't really trust Will Levis to do anything. So I'm just going to go with.
She's going with the run game.
Blaine's just looking at me like, what?
Out of default.
What's the odds? How many yards is he supposed to throw for in this game? Do we know?
He's got some. So for his right now, in terms of passing yards, and I actually was going to maybe perhaps go there. But Will Levis right now, they have him 150 plus, 225 plus, 250 plus. You can bet on any of those. I would probably say if I was going to bet on Will Levis, I don't feel comfortable with anything probably more than 150. Just with.
Dang, that sucks.
But look at up to this point, and again, the shoulder can be good, but it doesn't mean that
it wasn't better when he was healthy, right?
Yeah, so I don't know if I'd go with. Let's say I'd go with 175. or more for Will on the passing.
One
yards.
touchdown pass in 4 of his 5 starts. Just putting that out there.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's touchdown pass. That's not, how many yards?
Yards, yeah. What would you,
that's true.
what do you think, Blaine? When you return from an injury like that, you've been on the bench, you might be a little rusty.
It's hard, it's really hard to
I
say.
know.
I had that injury. I wasn't a quarterback. So I'm assuming that he's a lot better as far as how he feels that he can make every throw.
Yeah. Did you guys hear that at first he couldn't even do a push-up?
Oh, no,
after,
I-
and he
that
couldn't even,
sucks. Yeah,
for a
that's
while.
bad. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. See, I remember I was surprised because I had the same injury, and I was like, but I'm not a quarterback. I said, hey, man, but I couldn't even lift up my arm.
Sure.
But I kept playing because I'm just a defensive back. I'm not a quarterback. It's
You're
not
like,
my
put me out
throwing
there.
arm. So I was just like, whoa, this is weird. I wonder how long he'll be out.
Yeah.
And then he came out and he played and he did okay until you had to throw some deep balls and then, take some shots too. So I don't know. I think with his time off, I think he'll be able to make every throw. I think he's going to throw over 180. I think he's going to be in the 200. Here's why I say that. If the Titans think they have a shot of winning this game, I think he's going to have to because they're going to try to slow down the run game. And then so we'll see if, the offensive line can hold up in the pass game.
Sure.
Because sometimes as you go along with the game, and this is the issue I have with the Titans so far, they don't make adjustments from a bad play. Let's say whether it's a penalty or you lose yardage, everything in the beginning of a game, it seems like if that happens, all of a sudden the whole script is scratched. I mean, okay, we got to be able to respond to that. So I want to see them respond to a negative play early on in the game. And if they do, I think that's a good sign where this offense is going because it seems like, with Mason and now, the last 3 games, they're slowly getting better and getting rhythm and time. And I think a lot of it has to do because D-Hop's not here. And I say that because he had a connection with the quarterback. But also now everybody's spots are all set. Now, who's the number one guy? The guy that's making the most money.
Calvin
He's going to make
Ridley.
sure we go get him the ball sooner than later.
Blaine, that sucks that you have to throw that out there and it's true. It's their reality.
Yeah.
There's always something that puts them in third and unmanageable down and distances, right? Whether shooting yourself in the foot or making a mistake or getting some kind of negative play. Because they probably do have a better chance of converting when they're not having to deal with those issues. But like you said, they're having to respond from 3rd and 12, 3rd and 20, 3rd and whatever else that makes it like, you know what? There's another series down the drain because they have to try and find something in the playbook or some explosive play that very rarely happens that allows them to convert and continue the drive.
Yeah. And here's what I want to see Will Levis do. It's 3rd and 12.
Sure.
Throw it 5 yards and on the road. Because, if he doesn't get it, they're going to bluebirds here, at home.
Yeah.
But see if he can make a guy miss and then get the first down.
Absolutely.
Just take what they give you.
Yeah.
Let's get that to
Sounds
real quick,
simple,
Blaine.
but sometimes simple is
It's
what's
really
best.
hard to do, though.
Yeah,
The
it is hard
lack
to
of
do.
pressure
You're right.
when you're on the road.
Yeah.
Because like Blaine was talking about, there's a lot more pressure when you're talking about potentially getting booed because you're in your own backyard and you're doing stupid stuff, right? Well,
Good
guess
point.
what? There's nobody cheering for you. They want every single play to be a bad play when you're on the road. And, of course, you expect it to be loud and raucous against you, right? But you don't want to deal with having to walk that fine line of, ooh, I don't want to mess up. Ooh, I don't want to make a mistake. And watch these Titans fans start booing me. That's pressure that's not going to be in their situation that they're having to deal with this week, which could be a good thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The one thing, too, that you would like to see as a franchise is, we mentioned this earlier on in the show, is for the Titans to finally take care of the Chargers on the road because they've been able to do it here at home. The Chargers have met 49 times since 1960. The Chargers own the record, 29-19-1, which includes the 3-1 postseason advantage. Since the Chargers moved to Los Angeles, the teams are 2-2. However, the two teams have met 26 times in the Chargers territory, and the Chargers own the record 25-1. So interesting than that, Titans won their last meeting in September of 2023. So just a little bit of history of this weird matchup, which again, just can't seem to get it done on the road.
Crazy as that sounds, that predates Blaine and I. You got to go back to the 1900s for the last time that the Titans beat the Chargers on the road.
Yeah, that
When
is
you
wild.
hear L.A. Chargers,
It's just
what
weird.
player do you think of? And I'm going to just say Chargers.
Yeah.
Just Chargers. Who do you think of, P.I.?
I think of Natron Means.
Ooh.
I think of
definitely
Phillip
played against him,
Rivers.
ran against him a few times.
Or Vince, who's the quarterback?
Jim Everett?
Jim Everett. No.
That was before.
The bearded dude. Fouts?
Yeah, Dan Fouts.
Down Fouts,
Dan
yeah.
Fouts. Yeah.
Yeah.
man.
I go LT.
Elton, of
LaDainian
course.
Thompson.
LaDainian
Yeah.
Thompson.
Yeah,
One of
that
the
makes
best
sense.
to ever
Yeah,
do it,
that
right?
makes sense.
The
Yeah.
good old when it was San Diego Chargers,
Yeah, the
which it
San
should always have been.
Go Superchargers.
Exactly.
Remember that?
Now there's no home to the Chargers down there
it got
because they took that down.
SoFi belongs to the Rams and the Raiders.
Exactly. Yep. It is the Lee Company countdown to kickoff. Lee Company, all you need. You can visit them online at leecompany.com. We continue our coverage as the Titans are taking on the Los Angeles Chargers today on the road. When we return, let's get into a little bit more about the offensive line. Also, let's touch on the defense a little bit as well. You're listening to the Lee Company countdown to kickoff as the Titans take on the Chargers. Welcome into the Lee Company Countdown to Kickoff as we gear up for the Tennessee Titans on the road this afternoon against the Los Angeles Chargers. We're brought to you by Lee Company. Lee Company, all you need. Visit them online at leecompany.com. So, guys, I'm here with Blaine Bishop, Brad Hopkins, and Buck Reising actually joined us in hour one. So he is live from Los Angeles. Follow all his social media posts today. I was looking at some of the social media posts from our correspondents that are out there, including Jimmy White. Just put out a shot of Will Levis throwing the ball. Looks good. It looks to have that zip on it. And also placed in a picture and some video out there of Calvin Ridley catching some passes. So the guys are getting warmed up, and we will get you counted down to Titans Radio, who will take over for us in about an hour. So resetting the headlines with Will Levis being named the starter. He has not played in a game since October 13th versus Indianapolis. And guys, I'll get to the sound in just a minute, but the big thing for him is, gaining some different perspective, being on the bench, looking at things in terms of a different viewpoint, right? Not being the guy that's out there watching another guy do it. How valuable can that be?
Well, first off, I like to see him get the reps during the week that allows him to have better timing and better cohesion with his, the line in front of him, understanding exactly what they're dealing with and the plays that are called, but also making that connection with Calvin Ridley, with Nick Westbrook-Akine, those guys that have been really impactful while Mason Rudolph was in that position, right? So I think that him, getting a lion's share of what they're doing as far as the game plan is concerned, what Nick Holtz would like to try and see be effective against this Chargers defense, because it's going to be a challenge. You're talking about
it's
a team.
Stingy defense.
I mean, they're number one in scoring, but they're also ninth against the rush, which is the strength that you were talking about for this offense. They're ninth against the pass, which means they're pretty balanced in that capacity. But I think that him getting more work during the week would allow him a better opportunity, and we'll see just how effective his arm can be in those situations.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think you're hopeful that he got those kind of reps. It's now more about his arm.
Right.
So if you have confidence in your arm, then you go into the game thinking that you can make every throw and you feel confident in your ability. Now, the question is, once he gets hit or on the shoulder or falls on it, or if he has a bad play, you're talking about no excuses. Let's say he gets hit while he's throwing. Does he still have the same velocity on the football? So those are the things you're looking for. Everything else to me should be status quo as far as the offense, getting your relationship with Ridley and all your different receivers and understanding how they like to run routes and what you're reading off their body language, and just kind of be a point guard, so to speak, of the offense and be a distributor to your playmakers. And let's see if he can do it on a consistent basis. Those are things he could have found standing on the sidelines. Because I tell you one thing, you get a bigger scope of understanding, not just about what you do, especially with the quarterback, but how everything comes together. And it should be more so than not with quarterbacks to see that vision, because they're the ones actually, running everything on offense. So I know when I stood there and I was injured, you kind of see things from a different perspective of what other players doing, understanding where the help is, where it's not. So hopefully he will see some of these things that help him be a better quarterback, and hopefully then he won't play hero ball, as I give the term, and just let the offense work itself out. And then sometimes you're going to lose. That's okay. All I do is remember, why is Peyton Manning just falling down in the pocket, by the way? Oh, he's scared. No, he's smart. He says, guess what? I lost that rep. That's okay, but I'm going to get him back the next one.
Exactly.
And that's
not giving it to the defense.
Right.
That's what he's saying.
Yep.
You win some, you lose some.
You do. Speaking of perspective, Brian Callahan was asked earlier this week about what he hopes Will Levis gained, and that is exactly what he said he hoped, is him to gain perspective. Here's Brian Callahan earlier this week on quarterback Will Levis.
Perspective. I think that's always a good thing. It's, he had a chance to kind of sit and watch, listen. That's never going to be a bad thing for him. And hopefully, took some of the things that maybe Mason did well, or some of the ways Mason operated that he liked or felt like he could do something like that would help him. And then just a chance to step back and step out of the limelight for a second is good for a breather, almost, in a sense. And hopefully there's a renewed perspective and of what the offense can look like, how he can fit in it, some of the strengths that we can highlight for him, which would be exciting. So that part, the perspective is probably good, and I think that it hopefully will have helped.
Also, I would think from Will Levis's standpoint of things, because we talk about all the time, there's not a lot of development nowadays of these NFL quarterbacks that are, drafted. They're a lot of times expected to step into crappy situations, let's be honest, if you're a first round pick, especially. And it can be pressure sometimes to do it in a short amount of time. But this organization has said, Brian Callahan and company has said, we are going to find everything we can out about Will Levis this season. So if you're Will Levis, you feel like you at least have the backing of your head coach and organization to find your way. But at what point do you really need to show you've taken the steps?
I will say one thing that Aaron Rodgers does not do is give you any sort of indicators where he's going with the football. He is the master of looking off where he's going with it and then going in a completely different direction. Patrick Mahomes does the same thing. And Blaine can speak to this.
Not giving it away.
If Will Levis doesn't stare down his receiver, the one he's going to first, to give an indication of exactly where he's going with the football, and in some instances, whether that guy's open or not, that would allow the defense to kind of be sitting on their heels and like, hey, look, we don't know where he's going with this football. I've seen Mason Rudolph do that a couple of times. It's called manipulating the defense with your eyes. You know what I mean? As I'm staring down the center of the field, I might be looking to the flat. And if I see that there's somebody covering him, bam, I'm going to go there with it. Because guess what? It's keeping the safety right there in the middle of the field because he's looking at the quarterback's eyes himself. So, talk about that a little bit, Blaine, how important it is for a quarterback to be able to manipulate the defense with what he's looking at.
Well, naturally, your preconceived, reading of the defense is when you get to that comfort level. I don't know if he's at that comfort level yet, and I think that's why he stares down the receivers because he's probably still not comfortable. It's not natural, like the snap of a finger, like he's done it 50 billion times to understand where guys are supposed to be. It's not just him; it's the offensive play call, it's the actual receiver running routes. So I would say trust in the offense as well as the players there, and they'll be at the right spot at the right time. All it takes is one time for a guy not to be there. But when you're manipulating guys, I think you're just looking down the middle of the field because here's what you're taught as a safety. You're not looking at the eyes or head because first and foremost, I can't see that, and he can dupe me with his head and his eyes. Well, guess what? I got duped. All it took me was one time by Mr. Yours Truly, Mr. Peyton Manning. He looked over there and I took off from deep middle. I'm going to get this pick. And then he did like this. Oops, sorry, Blaine. I'm throwing over here. Thank you. So what you're supposed to be reading are the actual shoulders.
Okay.
Because your shoulders here, then you patiently, if you're in the deep half, then you go on the throw. Usually most guys pat, then throw. So it's the shoulders, not actually the head that you're looking for because the head can, it can trick you, So his shoulders, he can't. He turned his shoulder this way, he got to throw over here. So when that guy pats and then let it go, you go.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting.
Yeah. So it's interesting to see, I know a lot of people say that, watch his eyes and head like, oh, okay, really? I can see his eyes? Like, I'm 30 yards away.
Yeah,
I
right.
can't see his
with a helmet
eyes.
on.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, though. A lot of young receivers, though, they end up turning their shoulders the way that they're actually going to throw the football. So you're right.
Yeah.
The head is the thing. But here, I'm going right there to the flat. My shoulders turn, too. I'm not going to turn all the way back across my body and go over here.
Right.
So they give you that indicator.
That's what makes Mahomes so difficult because he'll do like that.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. They'll like that.
Shoulders turn outside. You know what I mean? Exactly.
So it's kind of a crazy deal, but it can work in your favor other times too. So it's funny. I watched Ed Reed bait Peyton Manning in the throw, and I said, "Oh man, I could never do that. I could never do it." He acted like he opened his hips like he was going to go where he was looking, and then speed turned out of it because he knew he was going to come back with his shoulders and throw over there. He picks it. I go, "Oh my."
Like that's another type of.
That's
did
a
you
whole
guys?
other level,
Speaking
man.
of Ed Reed, did
That's
you
why he's
guys
in the Hall of
know?
Fame.
Yeah, did you know he is Jaquan Jackson's uncle?
Oh,
and
I did not.
I just did my 2-minute drill, which features on it features on News 2 every weekend.
Out on us.
Yeah, he's Ed Reed's nephew.
Yeah,
and he said he grew up with him. He came to all his games, and the advice like he gave him too was just like, you got to just be you. And it just was a phenomenal. If you have a chance to go back and look at my 2-minute drill, it's really cool. Just him talking about his uncle and just casually a Hall of Famer.
You should be doing that on your morning show. Kayla, 2-minute drill.
2-minute drill, yeah.
Every week.
Right? I mean, you really get to know some things. You're like, wait a second,
I
what?
would tune in for sure.
Thank you, Blaine.
At that time.
Yeah, you said
for sure.
Ed Reed, so I was like, oh, yeah,
See
that's
that?
right.
Like, she teaching me all kind of new stuff.
Yeah, the more you know.
That is crazy. He's probably got all kind of cousins in the league.
Right? I go, could I get a picture? Like, is there a picture you could share? He goes, oh, let me text him right now. In the locker room, he texts, can I get a picture that I could use for this story?
And Uncle Ed's like, you don't have one already, dude? What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
They call your mama.
No, he said, I don't put him on Instagram, though, because I don't want people just, flooding and saying, can I get this and that, which makes complete sense. I was like, I respect that. So, a little side note there.
I'm going to text Ed Reed and ask him if that's his cousin.
Right?
Yeah.
See, Blaine's got him on speed dial.
I know.
Oh, yeah. Ed Reed. Yeah. All those
so
elite
great.
things. I'd be like, oh, man, I wish I could do that. I can't do that.
That's a special player, but that's cool though. You have a relationship with him too. With your time playing with him. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Titans trust their home to the Lee Company to tackle their HVAC, plumbing, and electrical problems. They can protect your home too. Your next play. Visit LeeCompany.com. Lee Company, all you need. We're, of course, counting you down to the Titans and the Los Angeles Chargers this afternoon in the Sunshine State over there, the West Coast. So a little bit of a time change. I'm just curious, guys, when you guys made that trip across to the West Coast.
Across the water.
Yeah, it doesn't change anything. Are you guys screwed up by the times or anything?
So what Jeff would do is he would take us out there on Friday.
See, that's what I thought. And we asked Brian, like, is anything going to change? He said, no, he's always done it this way. Or they've, whoever he's been with.
Did it help us?
Yeah, did it help you guys?
Just gave us more time to shop.
Of course. Like Buck in Beverly Hills,
No, but you know what Jeff liked to do was during the away games, especially the ones that were maybe just an hour or two away from us, we would fly in after we got walkthrough done on Saturday, and it left less time for us to be able to just go out and goof off and do stupid stuff, right? We would get in probably 5 or 6 o'clock, go check into your room, go down for a walkthrough, then dinner, and then you're pretty much, it's time to go to bed, and get ready for the game the next day. But when you go out on a Friday, or you go out there with a little more time to get yourself, your body's clock adjusted to the 2 hours, because like we talked about at the very beginning of the show, this isn't a noon kick for them. It's a 3 o'clock kick for them, despite their bodies saying, yes, it's a noon kick, right? So you're not having to get up as early. When you got a noon kick, you're up at probably 7 o'clock, eating by 8, and getting your body ready. But now, guess what? The guys don't have to get up till 10 o'clock maybe or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's usually the teams that come from the West to over here is kind of probably more, a lot tougher.
That's a good point.
That's true.
Yeah.
Than us going over there because we ultimately just play a little bit later. So, I would just block out everything. Jeff would always have us still on the time of here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was always interesting when you're looking at and then you start paying attention to the actual time there and then you get all confused. But, it didn't matter to me. I'm just showing up.
Business is business, right?
Yeah, but it's definitely some guys it does mess up.
Sure, yeah. Well, speaking of, you just got to go do business. You guys, we have not talked about it yet. We mentioned it briefly with Buck Reising, but special teams. And you're looking at a Harbaugh team, too, by the way. When it's a Harbaugh-led team, whether it's his brother or it's John, they're going to do, or Jim, excuse me, they're going to do special teams good, right? Right. And that's something where today you've got to see some improvement with this special teams unit. I know that Brian Callahan kind of talked about some of the penalties that the refs missed, called last week. I don't know if you guys heard that, but that was a thing. But when it's all said and done, you can't really have excuses when the special teams hasn't really improved enough.
There are a lot of teams that were flagged for alignment issues, like the Titans were flagged last week. And sure, they did issue not an apology, but an acknowledgement that, we didn't get it right. But that doesn't help you in the win-loss column,
no,
right?
It doesn't.
Or at least in that situation that could have been more problematic. But teams are super important because it allows you, one, to be able to flip the field. And it does determine a lot of, how the defense starts out. Like we watched the Detroit Lions game where the Lions were getting the ball in almost a dang red zone because of blocks, because of returns.
5 times they had it in, short
Or
distance.
Conversely, our offense starting at the plus 50 when you get good returns or, at least having, half the field to go to. If you get a good punt, because the offense stalled out. Guess what? The defense doesn't have its back against the wall already in our own territory. They at least have something to work with to where maybe they can get a 3-and-out or cause a punt situation for the offense. So special teams is super important because it determines where you're going to take the ball in that next ensuing drive, whether it's offense or defense.
Yeah, special teams is all about the 1-2. You got to want to go down there and make a play or make your block, do what you need to do.
As an individual, right?
Yeah,
too.
as an individual. And what has changed is I just think the desperation when you're a backup in this league and being on special teams, when most of the time you've been a starter your entire life, and then all of a sudden now you got to relish that role. Some guys take a minute to kind of relish. Special teams was harder to me than actually playing defense. It really was. I mean, I got so bruised up in special teams. You got to be a kamikaze.
When did you stop having to cover?
Second year.
Second year?
Okay.
Well, yeah. I started week 10, unlike you. You started week 1. But, I started, and then I was still on special teams. You talking about exhausted.
Right.
I was spent. So I just think, it's much harder now to coach, I would say, because special team guys you usually have for 7 years or so. Now, 3 years, if not, they shuffle you out and you move on. If you can't become a starter, then, we're going to go move to the next guy, and we're going to draft a guy, bring an undrafted guy. So it's a difficult one. I feel for the coaches. I know Jim and John. John Harbaugh was the Ravens head coach, was the special team coach in the Eagles. And you talking about somebody who MF'd you every day. I used to sit in these meetings, and I was a backup, right? And so I'm not on special, but I would want to go out there and do it. You go jog down on kickoff for a warm-up for me. In my mind, I'm like, I'll help. Yeah, right. Boy, the next thing you know, I'm getting chewed out because I ain't running fast enough. Like, hey, man, I'm trying to help you. So that's what I'm talking about. It is that serious. So I don't know how hard they go in practice, as far as full speed. I'm not talking about annihilate hitting people. I'm talking about with the tempo, the tempo of the speed, so you can get a better picture of what it's actually going to be like in the game. And then I also used to use a technique when I was the gunner is I'd run out of bounds so you couldn't block me. And then, now I think they kind of changed the rule. They can block you as soon as you come back inbound, but I'd go way out of bounds. Like I'm going
running behind the Gatorade container.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of things that's changed, but it is a really hard deal to do, but you got to embrace it. And if you don't, you won't be in the NFL for long.
Another example of what Blaine is talking about is even when you see a kickoff where the ball goes into the end zone and the returner's not going to do it.
Right.
Wait for a couple of seconds and watch those dudes that have been running down the field full, and they're still running until the play gets called dead, because that is their moment. You have 22 starters on a team, right? Offense and defense. But there's 53 that are active that day on the roster. So it means those other dudes, that's their opportunity. That's their chance to shine. That's their chance to give that maximum effort that sometimes can help turn the course of a ball game.
It can change the momentum of a game. That's
Absolutely.
how special teams is. So, that's, man, I sure hope they continue to improve a little bit. Now, they had some great returners here the last couple of weeks, so I got to give them that. Even the kid from New England was good. Jones, I remember him coming out. I think
he was really good.
But he was a defensive back, too. So he was, I think he went third round. He's a great returner. Punt and kick. So, so we shall see if they continue to improve. I don't know. Maybe the impact of this kickoff, you think it's starting to have a little bit impact in the game or no?
It's interesting to ask.
The kick returns.
You remember how you were talking about you and on cover teams until maybe week 10 or the next year. Me and Henry Ford were on the wedge. You remember the wedge back in the day?
Oh man!
Where some maniac,
I had to knock the wedge.
You're a wedge buster.
No, I got flipped up on the down.
Blaine, like, man, I'm like you were saying, you were getting bruised up.
I was doing kamikaze. I was doing
life of a DB.
Jeez,
but I would say that you don't have guys coming down near as fast when you're closer in proximity because of the new rules versus a dude running from 40, 50 yards and he's at full speed by the time he hurls his body into you. But, it's also more precise for the kickers, too, because they got to be able to hit it into that special area, especially if you're trying to keep it in play and make them return the ball. You've got to be pretty precise that way. So I think it's a little more degree of difficulty nowadays, but it is, in essence, a little bit safer because you're not having to deal with that maximum speed that we were talking about special teamers given.
So we spoke a little bit about this Chargers defense and very stingy. I think they're giving up just a little bit over 12 points per game. There are a lot of also familiar faces over on that side of the ball, too, with the Chargers, including Elijah Molden, who has honestly been healthy this year and really was healthy in camp as well.
He was.
And was feeling good. And then they traded him away. And clearly, we had issues now with Quandre Diggs getting hurt. And I've just
the release of Adams.
Jamal Adams was released. So I do feel like it's an interesting thing now. You go over there. He's leading the team with 3 interceptions, I believe.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you this, though.
Well,
going back,
I think a couple of them were tip balls.
Yeah,
I'm not taking away from him. I'm not taking away
Right.
from what he's done.
You can say that's
He's
Ramani
still is a
Hooker,
role
too.
player.
Yeah.
He's a jack of all trades. He's a utility player,
He
which
is.
I really love. I was a little surprised. I think he requested to be traded, is what people say. You would know better than me.
Yeah, he was. I think they kind of, when they made the Jamal Adams move, especially, I think they kind of put a thing up saying, hey, maybe you're not going to get as much time or you're not going to be in a starting role. And then I think he was a little unhappy about
the
that.
100th overall pick back in 2021.
Third round.
Out of Washington,
Yeah, right. He played 16 games in 2021. He only played 2 games in 2022 and played 3 games in 2023, 15 games. But he was at least a little bit productive because he had a forced fumble, and an interception in each one of those seasons that he played more than 2 games, right? And this year he kind of had a breakout year with the 3 interceptions. But his best year was probably 2023, where he had 47 solo tackles. 25 assisted tackles. So the guy was flying all over the field when he was on there. But it might be like what you said, Kayla, whenever you've got a guy that comes in with some cachet like Jamal Adams, despite his health issues that he did bring with him, he's probably like, hey, look, I can play in this league. You know what I mean? And if you're going to sit me on the bench because this dude comes in here with a little more potential than me because of who Jamal Adams actually is, then I'd rather go someplace else to show you just how good I can be.
Yeah. So I think that was the case, but I'm not sure. I wasn't there. But also, he had that groin surgery twice, and that was what kept him from being on the field. But when he did play, to your point, he was always productive, but I always felt like he was a utility player. That means he could play nickel, Sam, dime, or safety in this league. And I thought he would be a great backup player that you could put anywhere in case some guys got injured. And I think they felt like, hey, man, you keep signing these safeties. Obviously, you're telling me that I'm not good enough.
Exactly.
At least here.
Yeah.
So,
and I think, I believe he was actually also, I know for a fact, he was drafted by John Robinson and, obviously the old staff too. And sometimes, like you said, they have a new vision, then, you move on from guys like that. But he is having a heck of a year. Just wanted to point him out. A couple of the other names that I didn't even know, guys. I knew Tier Tart was over there.
Dupree.
Bud Dupree. I said, oh my goodness, Bud Dupree's over there. Which, was like, oh yeah, that short little time here. And then Hassan Haskins. You talk about special teams.
Michigan
and maybe one of those guys that you're missing a little on the special team side of things. That's a name that pops up, certainly. You are listening to the Elite Company Countdown to Kickoff. We are getting you ready for the Titans and Chargers. Elite Company, all you need. You can visit them at leecompany.com. I'm going to ask you a little bit more about the offensive line coming up with some changes. We should have the inactives out here in just a little bit. So we will see if Dylan Radins is going to play or if he's not going to play. But again, that's going to be a thing. If he plays, guys, then everything I think falls into place a little bit nicer than if it was he does not play. Because then you have Daniel Brunskill, who they feel that's a good enough backup center with the cross kind of training he's had in the league to be, there working with Will Levis like he was all week.
Yeah. But the thing is, though, good enough might not be good enough. You know what I'm saying?
What are you saying there, B-Hop? I'm just saying.
I know.
Good enough and good enough, man.
They've had their struggles, right? And, to say a guy is good enough to do what? I mean, to stop this thing from sinking, to be better than you were before the lineup had its changes.
I don't even think Lloyd Cushenberry got enough credit, you guys, because when this injury happened, I don't think we talked enough about it. I think some people we were talking about the line and improvement and all this. A lot of that has happened because he's been that glue in the middle, and, they've admitted that. J.C. Latham admitted it this week, that he's really helped us all grow, and he was that leader in the room as well. I think that's a really underrated part that's missing.
Well, if we were only having one position really that was in flux because of how well Dylan Radins was playing, subsequently moving forward, from the beginning of the year. Lloyd Cushenberry, you paid some money to. He's a captain for a reason. That left side where they've invested heavily in the draft, it seems to be kind of molding itself into, something, a pretty good left side. But then when you put in
Leroy Watson.
And
He does have a little dog in him, though, and I agree with you,
And
Blaine.
he's getting more
I
starts.
talked to him after that win. I like him.
He's getting more starts, Blaine. What
I
have you
think
seen?
potentially what you're going to find out is he is going to be a great rotational piece
Sure.
next year. And then we're going to be like, we're going to have our starter and then we're going to have our rotational piece. Then all of a sudden the offensive line is going to continue development. Then we're going to have one of the better offensive lines in the NFL.
And
that's
then
what's going to happen.
yeah,
Just
that
not as
makes
quick as
everything
you
different.
want.
Right.
Will Levis is like, please, y'all get better. Come on. Trying to hold on.
Yeah.
All right, is the Lead Company Countdown to Kickoff, taking you up to Titans radio coverage and, of course, leading up to the game at 3 p.m. in Los Angeles. When we return, let's get into a little bit more about the Titans defense and what they have in front of them, the challenge they have in front of them today. You're listening to the Lead Company Countdown to Kickoff as the Chargers and the Titans meet in Los Angeles. Welcome in to the Lee Company Countdown to Kickoff as we get you ready for the Titans visiting the Los Angeles Chargers. The Titans trust their home stadium to Lee Company to tackle their HVAC, plumbing, and electrical problems. They can protect your home to your next play. Visit LeeCompany.com. Lee Company, all you need. The crew is here. Blaine Bishop, Brad Hopkins. I'm Kayla Anderson. Buck Reising joined us earlier from Los Angeles. You can follow him throughout the game. And guys, we just spoke a little bit about the Titans offense and what they'll be getting into going up against this Chargers defense. How about this Titans defense, though, continuing to, find ways to help this team, especially last weekend? The Titans have looked really good up front, getting some, sacks from Arden Key in terms of Jeffrey Simmons also ramping up his game. He came off of his best game. He had 8 quarterback pressures, tied for the most among all NFL interior defensive linemen in Week 9. He had a sack and a fumble recovery. He told us this week, guys, he's just seeing more one-on-one matchups, not getting as double-teamed as much.
Yeah, and usually that's a problem when you have to have 4 hands on the dude because it frees up somebody else to be able to win their one-on-one situations. As a matter of fact, a lot of coaches will tell you, win your one-on-one, win your matchup when you've got it to be able to do that. But you're talking about an offense that Justin Herbert is trying to take full advantage of. He's connecting with Quentin Johnson. He's connecting with Ladd McConkey. Joshua Palmer had a touchdown on 63 yards last week. So.
Right.
But also, you're talking about a J.K. Dobbins who rushed 14 times for 85 yards and had 2 touchdowns last week. Now, that's a position that the Titans are usually pretty good at, right? Slowing down the rush. I think we're ranked number 11th, just behind the Chargers, who are ranked 9th.
That's actually dropped, though, because they were at one point ranked 3rd, and that has slowly dropped.
Yeah. But you're talking about a balanced offense, of which the Titans have to deal with this year defensively. So this week, rather, that they have to deal with. So I would hope that back end issues of getting younger guys in, the inexperience doesn't show itself. You know what I mean? If that's something that Greg Roman's thinking about, hey, we got some dudes that need to be tested, when it comes to getting this ball off. But like we talked about earlier, and Blaine can touch on this too, whenever you got guys that are in the pocket along with you with the different colored jerseys, now Justin Herbert's not watching the routes that they're trying to connect with. He's watching that pass rush and dudes that are potentially being disruptive and hitting him in the face.
Yeah, right now, I don't know how this happens, but I think the Titans defense is number 1 against the pass. And I think
they
a lot of that, it was like the Detroit game was those short, fields and everything else.
That's true.
So I don't know if they are number 1, but the stats say that they are. So you would assume that they're getting a lot of pressure in the pass game, and I don't know if that's the case either. So what I can say is, I think the Titans defensive staff has gotten the most out of the players that they put out there week in and week out, especially when we're talking about most of the time the starting 2 corners hadn't even been available, that they signed in free agency.
Right.
Yeah, right.
So I think they done a heck of a job, even picking up, journeyman type cornerbacks and everything else. So hopefully that continues down this road of Arden Key and guys picking up the pace, because if they don't, I think eventually we're going to get to see where quarterback's going to be able to sit back in the pocket and still connect. And because they were giving up explosive plays or missed explosive plays against the Titans, they didn't give up. I mean, I can think of, 2 of them on Snead that didn't happen. Tariq Hill was open. They overthrew him. The one at home game, they overthrew him. Guys were open. They were behind the defense. So as long as they keep getting a little bit of luck and then make some plays, I think they'll be okay. But this game is, they got some legit receivers. Just how much I like McConkey too coming out.
He's been a security blanket for Justin Herbert as well.
They got some playmakers, so this is going to be interesting.
What the Titans' run defense was able to do last week is hold Ramondre Stevenson to just 16 yards total. I think it was 1.6 yards per carry. So that was good.
He'd been a force for them, because about the only thing that was a force for New England.
You think they'll be able to stop the run this game?
I think that's what they need to do to make them one-dimensional, is to be able to slow down J.K. Dobbins.
Because Justin Herbert is not Drake May.
I think they can. Yes, I do. Okay. I think that they will, because like Jeffrey talked about, hey, look, I had one-on-ones last week, which is something that I hadn't experienced
in a long time.
Right. So do that for me. Let me see if I can get that one-on-one, because I think by and large he's going to win them. Yeah. If not, then Tavondre Sweat will be able to take advantage. You got some bookends right there, some big bodies in the middle that should be able to collapse the pocket and allow those edge rushers, Landry and Key, to be able to do some things effectively pass rushing. But also, I would say that the Titans were problematic last week in the rush game from quarterback. Drake May had 95 yards rushing.
And what did I say about Drake May before the game?
Yep.
I said about he can rush.
athletic.
I said they got to run, man.
I would
they
expect
had
Justin
issues
Herbert, though,
with
to be
him.
leaving the pocket and getting after it like that.
And by the
though.
way, he had been dealing with some stuff in terms of his
Drake?
ankle. No, Justin Herbert all season long. So that's another thing with him. I wouldn't expect him to be super mobile. He's not super mobile.
So they did a good job of stopping the running back, but then whenever you had
Drake
the quarterback
May was
with a
on a
two-way
mission.
situation with the potential, he would get out and get going.
Yeah.
But Justin Herbert, like you mentioned, maybe a little more gimpy, and he ain't looking to run with that football.
Not as much as Drake May. He was a younger player.
That is true, too.
And, he was a former basketball player too.
Yeah.
So I've kind of watched him throughout. So I thought he could run and be an impact running the football, and he was, and he'll run when needed, not because he wanted to run or, he wants to throw the ball, but he was trying to fight. So those are the guys that are dangerous, being a DB, because it makes it a nightmare in the secondary.
I'm sure.
Buying time and all that. Do you remember that one he threw and took 8 seconds or whatever? How many
11
times?
seconds.
I was exhausted.
Yes.
I can't imagine if I was running around chasing the guy I got to
No.
guard.
It's like, just
I mean,
get
that was
down, and then he
unbelievable.
falls down
Could
and
you
still
believe that?
throws it.
Don't you almost have to have your eyeballs be able to separate themselves to be able to watch the guy that you're covering, but then also look at the quarterback just in case he goes up?
Nope, I did not. I wasn't split eyeballing. No, you know what I did? I just said, I'm going to hold on to my guy. When I say hold on, I was holding on to him. You ain't going nowhere right here, right the waist, man. Come in. We ain't going nowhere, man. You better stop this, man. So, that's tough there, man.
As soon as you turn your back, right? He's looking at you. There you go.
All it takes is one time for that ball to whip by you, and you start looking, and oh my God, what? He caught a touchdown?
Yeah.
That's what it seemed like in that incident, for sure.
I think they're going to be able to stop the run, by the way, the Chargers. I'm talking about the Titans won't be able to stop them from running the ball. I think they're going to be effective enough to run the football, and that is dangerous. You know why? Because Harbaugh, everything is about running the football. He's going to show you some different runs that they haven't shown very often, and they're going to find a way, watch this, to get to the edges. And when I say I'm not talking about run around, I'm talking about double down. Harold Landry and Key both don't like that tight end in front of them.
Nope.
They trust me. They're going to start scouting, and they're going to run right at them. If I was going against this defense, there's no way I'm thinking I'm going to move Sweat and Simmons. That's almost impossible. You got to catch them sleeping, or you got to get them moving lateral,
good
then
point.
to get them back and slice them and dice them. There's no way. These guys are big strong human beings.
Really good point.
One thing that does that is 12 personnel.
Right. And that's what I think he's going to do.
Right. When you got a couple of tight ends out there, that naturally widens out the defensive ends, creates more run lanes, right? And they have to make more plays covering up that distance. And also when you have a sixth man blocking on the offensive line, then there's more dudes that can get physical up front. I wonder what kind of week that they had this week. Are they healthy enough to really put forth an effort to say, hey, we're going to be physical this week? Sometimes when you're beat up,
a lot of guys didn't practice
it's
again.
Hard to do.
It's hard to do that, right? But if you're healthy enough and you say, hey, look, fellas, we got 9 on 7. I know you don't want to hear that, but this is going to be a physical game, almost like Steeler Week. Remember when Steeler Week happened and we had to run goal line and 9 on 7, and we were doing so many things featuring the physicality up front. But if you're not healthy enough to practice like that, it shows up on Sunday.
I want to get to the linebackers in 1 second. Before that, though, Jim White has released the Titans inactives for today's game against the Chargers. That includes cornerback L'Jarius Sneed. We already knew he was going to be out. Linebacker Cedric Gray, the rookie that is, still trying to make his way on the field after returning from that shoulder injury. Cornerback Gabe Judy Lawley, safety Mike Edwards, running back Joshua Kelly, and tight end David Martin Robinson. So good news, guys. There is no Dylan Radins on this list. So it looks like Dylan Radins is going to be good to go at right guard, meaning that Brunskill will be at that center spot. So that's good news.
Oh, yeah, that's really good.
Anything else that surprises you on that?
No, but I'm glad that you just mentioned that Dylan is not on the injury report, because then there's less movement up front.
Yeah.
And you need as little volatility up front as possible. These guys need to have, time to be able to work with each other and just develop that trust that they need to have. Being able to pass off stunts, being able to, get good run fits, get a hat on a hat, stay in that situation and let the running back, whether it's Tajay Spears or who's going to be also in the lineup today.
Yep, he returns today.
Or Tony Pollard, who just ran for 124 yards. So they're able to have better vision that way, trust their line, and be able to do some things that way more consistently. And so I'm glad to hear that he's not on the IR report this week.
What it's like real quick, B-Hop, in the trenches when you miss a week. How
Yeah,
does
that's
your
a
body
great
feel
question.
in the trench when you're hitting somebody every play? Where I'm not, I could go a whole half and don't even touch anybody.
Yeah.
Your body is conditioned to take on those licks, right? And when you don't get them, it's
For a
like
week off. I mean,
I'm not trying. Of course, for those of you who are listening, you can't see this, but there are calluses that are built up on your hands when you're bench pressing, when you're doing a lot of things with your hands,
all
right?
your freaking holding
Yeah.
you doing.
Or holding, or when you're holding.
Right.
Either way, but when you don't have calluses, that means that your hands aren't getting that work.
You're not getting the work
You know
done.
what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So you don't have that little buffer that you need to have to be able to sustain, the physicality of hitting over and over again. So sometimes that time away. As a matter of fact, I didn't like it when we had an early bye week or when we had some sort of situation where we had time off, because for me, it affected that rhythm and it affected my ability to be able to sustain those blocks that I knew were going to be harder than normal, right? I just like to be able to go and go and go and go because you get used to it that way. You get used to the popping, you get used to the hitting. And when you take time off, it's like, man, now you got to get yourself reacclimated with doing it all over again. So
But
I didn't like
does your
it.
body feel fresh though?
Well, put it this way, things weren't hurting as bad, but eventually it's going to get tested.
Yeah.
Whether
Yeah.
it's Dylan Radins' toe or it's something that everybody, and Blaine will tell you this, everybody at this point of the season dealing with something.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Nobody feels
Yeah,
great.
I would try to accidentally step on Dylan Radin's toe.
Yeah, it's
Whoops.
right.
Yeah.
As you're swinging
Yeah,
and kicking.
they
So-
would walk back to the hill. I was like, oh my bad, I didn't see you. Wait,
Yeah.
you okay?
See.
And he'd be like, oh my god, I'm like, oh my, you got something wrong with your toe?
Yeah. So that's why players be looking at the injury report.
Exactly.
Hey,
Of course they do.
What's hurting him?
Yeah.
What do we need to pay
Especially if
close
they were a
to?
skill guy. Oh my god.
I mean,
he's got
that's a
hurt
real
ankle?
thing,
Exactly.
It is.
which is
This
wild.
is short. I definitely looked at that.
And Bradley Bozeman got fined because he was defending his quarterback once they decided to twist him. Because who was it that got fined actually for twisting the quarterback and taking him down when he knew he was dealing with an ankle injury? And Bradley kind of jumped in there and gave him a couple
Gave
of
him a
pops
little-
to the face because hey, look, you ain't gonna be doing that to my quarterback. But that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, of course.
And don't ever put your hands up. That means you're guilty.
Oh, what are you talking
don't
about?
do that.
What?
So you
Just
have to
keep it
like
moving.
learn
Just keep it
acting too.
moving.
Yeah,
Seriously.
exactly.
How to act.
Well, because it shows that you were paying attention to what potentially could be called if I put my hands up.
Yeah.
If you just went on down the field jogging, it's like, oh, he really didn't do anything because he's not paying attention to the fact that we're looking at you
That's
while
so
you're doing
interesting
that.
from a
Seriously.
player's perspective.
It's the little
you know?
nuances that veterans are taught. If I'm holding, I'm not going to, like, right, Blaine. The last thing I'm going to do if I held the dude, especially on the edge, and all of a sudden the running back goes by me, is like, oh, I wasn't holding him.
Yeah, right.
Don't do
I see him
that.
do that. Oh, I'm like, well, you just gave it away.
Yeah.
I thought Jackson was trying to say something. He was like,
No,
"You wanna
he's
get
just
involved?"
stretching.
Nice.
Actually, Jackson Williams back here
He was
producing
an old
today
lineman. He
for us. He's
held
just
all the
Jackson
time.
knows there's no
Stretching
such
it
thing as
out, you
holding,
know?
man.
Nope.
You're listening to the Lee Company Countdown to Kickoff. Lee Company, all you need. You can visit them at leecompany.com. We're getting ready. We're just about 15 minutes away from Titans Radio taking over. I did want to get back really quick to the linebackers for the Titans because we were talking about the run game for the Chargers. And, you know, Jim Harbaugh, it's always focused on the run, right? Like, look what he did at Michigan and how big a part of that was to win
49ers
the national
everywhere.
championship, the Niners. J.K. Dobbins, by the way, finally healthy and being able to
rejuvenate
contribute
his
in a
career.
season,
Man,
right?
wow.
He had just been injury. I covered him at Ohio State. He had just been injury ridden though ever since he got in the league.
Knees, right? Or hamstrings
Yeah,
and stuff.
a little bit of everything. But when it comes to these linebackers, you guys surprised at all that Jack Gibbons for the last 2 weeks has played really well? He's graded out, according to PFF, as the highest rated Titans player, and so much so that Jerome Baker can't even get on the field.
Yep. The
But
candlestick
that's the
maker.
way. That's the way Jack was playing in preseason, though, because I remember his
Oh, he
numbers
was,
standing out.
yeah.
He was flying around. Kayla, I think you mentioned something like that.
Yeah.
Number 50 is all over the place. You know, for a guy that had some reps last year and really started to kind of getting himself a little more comfortable with the position he was playing. But it doesn't surprise me the fact that he's out there being more productive and making plays, you know, from that interior of the linebacker spot that he's doing. And you mentioned J.K. Dobbins and the problems that they could have this week. The guy rushed for 6.1 yards a carry last week, a couple of touchdowns, and only on 14 attempts, it was just 15 yards shy.
And again, that was
of
against
100.
the Browns, correct?
And that was
Yeah.
against the Brownies.
Yep.
So, you know, I don't know, maybe that was an indictment on who the Browns were as a rush defense. But like you said, Jim Harbaugh loves the consistency of being able to win up front, which then opens up the rest of the playbook. He understands that better than anybody else.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We need to call him Dr. Gibby.
Dr.
Now,
Gibby,
don't forget.
did he earn that back? Because I know that he lost it for a little
you
bit.
know, I didn't
so
know. Yeah, because him and Braves. But you know what? I'm happy for Gibby. The whole key to his play is can he do it game and again? That's the difference between a starter and a backup. Most of the times, if you're that borderline guy, you're missing something, can you do this over a long period of time? And most guys can't. I got to tip the cap to him. A really smart player, but is he somebody that's going to be feared on the defense when other teams are looking at us? Probably not, but guess what? He's always going to be in the right spot. Whether he makes a play or not is another thing.
Oh, something just came to mind.
Yeah.
Came to mind.
Tell us.
Where was Kenneth Murray last year?
Yeah, it was a Chargers.
Oh, he was with the Chargers. Yeah. We talked to him this week about going back.
Maybe he's got some get back. He's like, you know what? No.
Well, get back. No, don't do it. Don't do it. You're gonna get wrecked.
You're gonna get wrecked if you do that.
You're gonna get wrecked.
Speaking of a former Charger, you guys, and it just totally blowed my mind when we were talking about the defense up front. Sebastian Joseph Day has been really good for this team.
Yeah,
by the way, he came over from the Chargers as well.
Chargers
he was with the Rams, too. Yeah. So
I didn't know much about him, so he's a solid player.
He's been really good.
He's been really solid, consistent.
Got that booty on the middle of his back. That means he got some power.
That's
you know what I'm saying?
not the only time someone has mentioned that this week. I think
got that high rump. You know how that means. That means you got power in the groin.
Power, yes.
What's that?
The power in the rump.
Go ahead. Why you want to check out the guy's butt and his quads?
Yes.
His quads, his power source. That's what you're looking for.
What if Floyd Reese used to call guys like that? Heavy legs.
Rump shakers?
Hey, heavy legs. Yeah. Who? What?
Rump shakers?
Rump shakers. Ooh, you said that, Kayla. I mean, you said that. Jackson,
rump shaker.
You're listening. That is an old song, by the way. You are listening to the Lead Company Countdown to Kickoff. Lead Company, all you need. Visit them online at leadcompany.com. You guys, it is time for our keys to the game. Who wants to go first?
Let's go, Biggity B.
I really don't know. This is a game that I'm really conflicted on because when I start watching film on the Chargers, I thought they really were an elite team, but more and more I watched them, I thought they were just above average team. So to me, if Titans play at their best, I think this is going to be a back and forth. Could be a low-scoring game, plays to part two. The Titans, I think the team that makes the least amount of mistakes, as you mentioned, talking about turnover ratio, I think that will determine this game.
Mm-hmm.
And how they do that, which is where I'm going, is staying within the constructs of the game plan.
Yeah.
Sure.
Will Levis.
This team is not good enough to improv.
Exactly.
They're not good enough to go off script and be successful in that capacity. What happens is you usually end up doing something stupid that ends up costing you a game. So if you trust what you see, if you stay within what you've been working on all week, you have a better chance, a more consistent chance to win the ball game. Don't do things that are uncharacteristic. Don't do things that we're not asking. And I say we, like we're on the coaching staff, that they're not asking you to do. No hook shots, no behind the back stuff, no simple.
I just saw Lamar Jackson do his 3-point shot.
Let Lamar do that.
You see that?
Then let Lamar do that. It works for him.
Lamar is on a whole other level.
But I can do that
too. You can't.
Right?
Don't
make
watch that
it
tape.
so easy.
Somebody block out that Ravens game for Will. Will's probably saying, hey, man, I could do that too. No, don't do it. Don't do it. What about you, Kayla?
Bro.
I'm on kind of the same line as you all are. And I wrote down this: protect the football, first and foremost. Will Levis give this team a chance? And when I'm going to expand on that. In the first half, the first two drives, whatever it is, just don't do something to hurt the team. Because I feel like with Will, he needs all the confidence he can get in this game, right? And if you're able to build that from the start, and you're not going to have a messy turnover or a dumb mistake happen where you lose that really quickly. He needs all the confidence he can have in this game as he returns. And so I think, Will, just give your team a chance to win and play some clean football. And then I think you have a chance if you're the Titans on the road, which, by the way, a 7.5 dog, which is a big number.
Right.
That means they cannot give up any explosive plays. And Levis is going to show his arm talent today. We're going to see a deep one.
Ooh, look at that.
Real quick before we check it out, I think that sometimes the pressure that the Titans have been experiencing in the backfield, it almost makes his quarterback feel that he has to make something happen. Because if you keep getting hit and pressured, whether they're sacks or not, at some point you say, golly, I've been working on all this stuff all week. Let me get a chance to do it, right? And if you've got a minuscule opportunity to do it, sometimes that can be the window that gets you into trouble, right? So,
But you got to fight that.
got to. I get it. I understand
It's like
that
that candy
completely.
on the table. Leave it alone.
Don't touch that candy bar.
I know,
When
right?
I come back here, that candy bar better be on the table right there. Dude, you just
leave
fiddle
it
your
alone.
fingers like,
Exactly.
there it is.
Oh, but
Let's go take a little bit of a bite.
I'm getting. My mouth is getting watery.
I want to. So we gave our keys to the game. I'm interested though, since we are on the note of Will Levis, who do you feel like in this game back he kind of builds a connection with? Because we hadn't really seen that in the prior games. We all just said D-Hop because that's
the
his
year
guy
before.
from before. But who's a guy we can maybe see
15.
him building some connection?
Number 15.
NWI, huh?
Yes, because they're not
Mr.
thinking about him.
Consistent.
Because they're not thinking about him. Well, they might be now because he's getting more productive,
Right.
but they're looking for number 0.
Old,
They're
reliable
looking for
Honda
83. He
Accord.
might be able to make some things happen. They're probably watching some of these other guys, but now anybody looking at 15 like they should be.
Well, for sure. That's what makes life easy for the third wide. But always, you got to go to the big dog. The guy making the big dough got to make the big plays. That's why he gets paid the big money. Let's go,
Calvin
Ridley.
Ridley.
Let's go.
Look at that. All right. Well, you have been listening to the Lee Company Countdown to Kickoff. We are getting you ready for the Chargers and the Titans. Of course, Titans Radio about to take over for us, and then they are going to lead you up to the game. And as we always say, guys, when it's all said and done,
Tighten up!